and welcome back to another episode of the Rumcast. This is the podcast where we talk all things rum with the people who love and shape the category, including sometimes people all the way over across the pond in Scotland, which we'll be doing on this episode today. I'm Will Hookinga, as always, and joining me from the sunny shores of Miami is my co-host, John Gulla. John, how's it going today?
Hey, it's good. Thank you. And you saved me from having to make the dad joke this time on the entry. So
that's right. We're dad joke free in this episode. In the intro. That is.
I mean, I cannot guarantee the rest of the episode will remain as such, but for now we're good. So, anyways, I just celebrated my birthday actually. So
that's right.
I'm older than I care to admit.
Happy belated birthday. I did wish you happy birthday on your birthday.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
So, yeah.
But, it was one thing that I found interesting during my birthday. My sister, my beloved younger sister, she wanted to host us and celebrate my birthday. And she asked me, hey, what kind of cake do you want?
All right.
Guess what kind of cake I asked for?
A rum cake.
A rum cake, obviously, right? I don't think she was expecting this because the reaction I got was, sure, no problem. But then when we got there, she was telling me, oh my God, I can't believe you. I have no idea how to make a rum cake, so I had to figure it out. And she's giving me all kinds of crap for
that's the kind of thing where you receive the text and you're like, because you made it open-ended and you asked, you have to respond like, sure, that's great. And then you turn over your shoulder and you're like, what the hell is a rum cake?
Yeah, and what did I just get myself into?
Exactly.
She had to buy a bundt cake pan, and so anyways.
Did she have to buy rum too?
Of course she had to buy rum.
I don't know. She might have had some already.
She did not, believe it or not. She had to borrow some, which is part of the story here. So anyway, we get to the cake part, and she's been talking, telling me she had no idea what she's doing. So we get to the cake, we dig into the cake, and I have to say, it was fantastic.
Nice.
Like, really good. Like, one of the better ones that I've ever had. And I'm not saying that, like, just, for shits and giggles. Like, it really, really was good.
So talk me through what exactly, what does the rum cake look like? I have a vague idea of what a rum cake is, but I honestly, I've had cakes with rum elements. I don't know if I've had a literal just rum cake before. Like, for example, I took my parents out to dinner. They were in town. My wife and I took them out to dinner, and there was a dessert on the menu, and it was like a strawberry shortcake of some kind, but there was like a rum element involved. So it wasn't a rum cake, but there was rum involved, and it was fantastic. But so tell me, what the standard rum cake, what are we talking about? What if I'm looking at it, what are the elements?
Well, let me caveat this first by saying I didn't make the rum cake, nor have I ever made one, but I know a rum cake because, I've had them before. In my mind, what a rum cake is kind of like that, the bundt cake style, like donut, hole in the middle type of thing. Not a donut, but like a hole in the middle. And it's got that kind of fancy kind of pound cakey shape. Yeah, and in fact, I think it's close to what I would consider like a pound cake would be. Okay. It's a white, or it's yellow.
Yellow cake.
On the inside, yellow cake, yep. And then it's got a nice golden brown on the outside of where it cooked. And instead of just being like pound cake or angel food cake, it's heavier than angel food cake. It's closer to pound cake, but it's got this rum element to it, very present. And it's also got like sugar. I know she mentioned that in her process, she had to make a simple syrup with just sugar and kind of pour that into the cake.
So like a glaze kind of?
It's more like soaking the cake.
Okay, all right.
Yes. Than a glaze. Again, I'm talking way out of my butt here because I don't really know. I've not done this myself, but that's what I think of when I think of a rum cake. Is it's not iced, although I guess it could be. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't ice it. Yeah, but it's sweet enough because you've got the rum and the sugar elements already in it. So yeah, it's just that kind of think pound cake, but with rum elements in it. So now
I'm liking it.
Yeah, it's really good. It's not going to bowl you over. I mean, I have very close friends that are Jamaican, from Jamaica, here in Miami, and they've given me rum cake before. Their rum cake tends to be a little bit more robust, which would make sense if they're using, Jamaican rums that are
Okay, you mean the rum part of it tends to be more robust.
Correct. That's what I mean. This one was a little lighter than those, but here's the whole point of why I wanted to communicate this. She doesn't know what rum she used.
Wait, how does she not know? Did it come in?
She didn't look at
just
the
a mystery bottle?
No. So what happened was she said she borrowed what was the remaining, I guess, a cup or a cup and a half or something of a bottle from her father-in-law.
Okay.
Who had a bunch of rum, who is a rum fan, and I think he's listened to the show, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Hey.
Yeah. So maybe I need to get in touch with him and see which one he's missing, because he just said, sure, go ahead and take one. But so this is the thing. We don't know what rum she used, and now I'm so sad. Because
well, John's sister's father-in-law, if you're listening to this, please, if you don't have John's phone number, just send us an email at host@rumcast.com and let us know what rum you lent out, because I'm very curious to know what was used to impart that rum special flavor to this rum cake.
It totally sounds like that Spaceballs joke, like, who is he to you? Nobody. He's my uncle's father's roommate's cousin's son. I don't know if you know that.
I never got into Spaceballs.
You've never seen Spaceballs?
I mean,
come on,
I've seen it here and there. I just never, I don't know.
Yeah.
It never clicked for me.
Oh, gosh.
That's
yet another
your
area.
dad joke moment for the intro.
Thank you. I got it in. Anyway, so here's the question I wanted to ask to our community, because I'm sure there are people who are much more familiar with rum cake recipes and probably have some like really good rums that they prefer to use. Mm-hmm. So I want to know, inquiring minds want to know, Will, what is the best rum to use for rum cake?
Yeah.
And I know Jamaican is a classic one, but I'd love to know if there are others out there besides just a specific Jamaican one that people have used that they really, really enjoy, and maybe the full recipe so we can give it out on a future episode. Because
that's a good call. Yeah. Message us on social media, send us an email, host@rumcast.com. Let us know what rums you're putting in your rum cake. I'm trying to remember now. I'm a big British baking show fan, and so I'm trying to remember if they've ever done a rum cake challenge at all, because I feel like rum cake is more of a British thing for some reason. Maybe I'm just making that up in my mind, but I don't know. It makes me think of that, but which I'm sure it's also popular in many of the rum making nations as well. But anyway, all that being said, we do have a connection to the UK in this episode with our first interview with a Scottish rum distiller. We were both very excited to do this. We talked with Kit Carruthers, who is the founder and distiller for Ninefold Distillery in Scotland. And this is a distillery that I'd seen pop up again and again online and kind of little interesting things over the years. I'd read some good reviews from people like Fat Rum Pirate and other sites, and it seemed like there was some genuine rum community enthusiasm kind of bubbling up around this Scottish rum distillery. And so we thought it would be great to just check in with Kit and get the whole story on sort of his process of starting the distillery and, his style of rum. And he's not the first Scottish rum distiller. There are a few others. There's a handful of them now, I think. And so also getting a little window and sort of how that scene is coming together and everything. But I think one of the things that both you and I have been interested in over the years is just these sort of newer rum communities, new rum traditions that are starting around the world. We've seen a kind of a rum revival in the US. We're seeing a lot of rum distilleries pop up in Europe now. It feels like a new one every month. We've talked a lot about new rum distilleries coming to Australia and other places. So this is another episode kind of in that tradition. And I'm excited for people to hear it.
Yeah, one of the most fascinating things to me, you said a rum revival, and I think that's true. And what Kit talks about is that there is a history in Scotland of some rum.
We did not know this.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So really, really cool part of the interview to hear that. So yeah, I think it's a really awesome insight into the window of Scottish rum.
Also, he's doing some really interesting stuff with building his own barrels. That was something I did not expect. So make sure to listen and get to the part about sort of the small but growing aging program. He actually laughed when we referred to it as an aging program. I think that made it sound a little too official, but Kit's doing some really cool stuff with wood over there. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, we'll go ahead and take a little break and go over to the interview. We are here with Kit Carruthers, the founder, owner. Kit, you do a little bit of everything at Ninefold, I would imagine. You're in the distillery right now. I know you were just commenting on how hot this may be the hottest Rumcast interview ever recorded. I think you said it's about 87 degrees Fahrenheit over there right now, but you're doing it anyway. You're powering through. You just let us know you're going to try not to curse as much as Pete Holland did on the podcast. So we'll need to maybe get like a swear counter, and then we'll go back and we can do like a little ding or something every time there's a swear word. But thank you for being here. It's really exciting. This is our first time talking with a Scottish rum distiller. So a first for the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And yes, I will try and keep swearing to a minimum. But I can't guarantee anything.
It's okay. We don't have sponsors that we need to keep happy. We don't have bosses or anything like that. We only have our listeners. And I don't think we've ever gotten a complaint about language on the podcast before. So, it's not something to be overly cautious for.
Yeah.
So to start, I wanted to talk a little bit about your background. I'm always interested, especially when it's a new distillery, just how the person kind of got into it. And then I was really interested when I saw that you had a background in what was described as geotechnical work and climate change research, which sounds fascinating on its own. And I'm sure it's a question you get a lot, but I had to ask, how you went from that to starting a distillery. As I understand it, you didn't necessarily have a distilling background or anything like that. So I was interested to know just where did the interest come from and how did you end up making that transition?
Well, to answer the first question about sort of how I ended up doing this, it was a cynical, cold, hard cash decision originally. Which is maybe not the best decision in the world because I'm still waiting on the millions to come rolling in. But
sure, it takes a little time.
It does indeed. So my journey into rum, I don't know if it's typical or not. I suppose I hate the word entrepreneur because I don't like applying it to myself.
Yeah, I get that.
I guess I got a vision in my head of what an entrepreneur is or should be. I don't feel like I fit that mold, but I guess that sort of is what I am. I didn't come at this as like a rum nerd, someone who's really passionate about rum, and it was a category that I've been in love with for years and years, and an opportunity came along for me or I just decided, fuck it. Let's build a rum distillery. So I definitely didn't come at it from that point of view. It was the decision to build a rum distillery around came as a way of diversifying the kind of revenue, I suppose, into a family estate. And so where I'm from, in rural Dumfries and Galloway in the south of Scotland, my family have owned land here for this estate for about 460 years now.
Yeah, I was reading that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so my dad is 13th generation laird.
Wow.
I'll be the next one. So it's very traditional in terms of the estate model. It's a mixture of farming. So we rent out farmland here. There's forestry. So we got woodlands. It's we grow as crop. We rent houses out, cottages. We have a little holiday cottage. There's fishing on the River Annan, which borders the estate. So these are all, you go to any estate in Scotland or in the UK, and these are very typical things to do for an estate. And I was looking at my future and my inheritance and decided that I wanted to do something a bit different. And I was quite taken with the whole idea of distilling, like craft distilling and craft brewing, and just, small businesses doing something that's quite cool, and would look quite kind of fun to do. So I didn't come at it from a love of spirit necessarily. In fact, not at all. This was really thinking of a business that could work here on the estate. And it was just an idea that I fancied. So my rum journey started at the point that I decided to explore building my own distillery. So I kind of I'm still on the journey, really.
We all are. We all are.
Came along with that. So I didn't have a background at all in distilling or hospitality or anything to do with the industry at all. Like I said, I had a previous life. I did geotechnical engineering, which I would say is quite grand. It wasn't really. It was very like finger in the air kind of thing, rather than doing complex calculations. That was for proper engineers to do. Yeah, it wasn't a job that I enjoyed at all, and so I ended up getting out of that and going back to university to do a degree in carbon capture and storage.
Okay.
Is climate change mitigation technology.
Yeah.
That was something which had always interested me, and thought here's something that I could potentially make a difference doing, instead of just building identical housing.
Right.
Housing.
So, go back to school and learn to save the world.
Yeah, basically.
Well, and just to make sure it's not just a degree, right? You got a PhD in this, so there's a little bit of a crowbar there between just an undergrad or studying, and you've gone a long time to school for this and have the PhD now. So, Kit, I'm interested in now. How you said kind of your engineering type of background has led you to be able to understand the ways in which you can apply that to a distillery, even without the specific distilling experience. But also, I'm kind of interested your climate change and even carbon capture and sustainability and all of that. Has that also informed the way you approached making the distillery? Are there specific ways even that you've thought about how this applies to sustainability and other things? Has that married at all?
Yes and no. So there's a little bit of a sustainability kind of factored into the building. So, for example, the building I'm in that I'm currently dating alive in is it is a converted old building. So this isn't a new building. This was another strand of why I wanted to set up business here, was to take buildings that had not been used for a long time and reuse them. So rather than fresh materials, brand new builds, all that kind of stuff, it's already here. So, and the philosophy behind the building was to insulate it and put double glazing in and put some solar panels on the roof, and just make the building as warm and efficient to keep warm as possible.
It's certainly staying warm now.
Yeah,
it is definitely.
You've succeeded.
I have. So there's a bit of sustainability built in there. I wanted to try and keep my energy use as low as possible. However, that's challenging, particularly when you're rural, actually, because your energy options are quite limited. And so, basically the building I was in had no power at all, and we're not on a mains gas line here.
Oh, really?
We had no water, no phone, nothing. So all I had to start, we had to start again on it. So the distillery is run off electricity. It's electric. So as the general grid becomes greener and more sustainable, more renewable energy put into it in the UK, then the distillery will then follow suit. It'll become greener that way, in that regard. So I'm not burning gas, and I'm stuck with burning gas. It is electric. So the future of the distillery, I want to not change my process necessarily, but I want to be able to do things in the distillery that allow me to use less energy to produce the same amount of.
Right.
And that's really my route to being more sustainable business. It's not to try and I see other small distilleries that talk about, we're 100% renewable powers because they pay for a particular tariff from a energy supplier that says that it's 100% green electricity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, because about 70% of the electricity that goes into the grid in the UK is not renewably sourced. So you can't differentiate the electrons that come into your building.
right.
Wind power or hydro from your gas plant. So
only give me the sustainable electrons, company, please.
Yeah, exactly.
Please.
There's a filter just before it comes into the building. all the crap stuff there. So I try not to talk about that side of things. I don't want to say I do the same. I be a supplier that's 100% renewable energy, but that's only to support that idea, and that's what we want to go to. I'm not kidding myself or anyone else that the electricity here is 100% renewable. Although I do have solar panels, so when I'm not distilling, then I am generating enough electricity to run the building. So
cool.
I'm probably more green than a lot of distilleries my size. My process as well, so something which I've just, as in the fermenter behind me, has the in the 3 years I've been fermenting and distilling, I've always started every fermentation new from scratch. So it's always clean, fresh water that's done into it.
Mm-hmm.
However, the fermentation that's on at the moment, I took back set. So I took what was left in the up to the end of a stripping run, and I used that instead of fresh water because it was already hot. So I didn't need to heat it, which is what I usually do, and it saves me having to use more water. So if this works, then that's a way that I can reduce my energy use and reduce my water use as well.
Well, and that's likely going to have an impact on the flavor of the final product as well. So that'll be interesting to find out.
Indeed. So this is new for me. So I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we'll see. It's unlikely that this will replace, for example, the recipe for my unaged, straight bottle or rum, because like I said, it should change the flavor. However, if this works, this could be what I do for filling casks, and then it makes filling casks cheaper, so I'm therefore more likely to put more away than I do.
Right. This is the first time you've done it?
Yeah.
Have you noticed anything different so far? And I like the smell of the fermentation, or it's exciting. We're witnessing this in real time.
You have to
trying to smell, trying to pick it up,
It's it does smell a bit different. It doesn't smell as sweet as it normally does.
Okay.
And it's not fermenting as quickly either. So I basically just use the exact same recipe that I would always do, the exact same proportions of molasses, yeast, and nutrients, and so on. So, that's just where I wanted to start. I just wanted to see how that would progress. So, so that's going to, if I do this again, it's going to take a little while to kind of get that dialed in. But when it gets distilled next week, we'll see what comes up.
I was gonna say, how many more days until you'll be able to actually taste it? Because we need to follow up as soon as you taste it, because I'm curious on your thoughts of how it compares to your typical production process.
I'm hoping that I'll distill the spirits on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm not sure. It depends. I was banking on the fermentation basically finishing by tomorrow night, but it may take another day, I think, to be done. But I should still then have time to get it done done on Friday.
Awesome.
So I'll hopefully get an idea then as to what it's like. But
we'll follow up on that for sure. I wanted to ask, you've been open about, and you already discussed it in the interview so far, about choosing to go into rum, mostly from a business standpoint. And I think I've heard you talk about kind of the flexibility the category offers. So once you decided to do that, I'm interested in just, what was your sort of rum education process like? Did you just start trying whatever kind of rum you could get your hands on? Did you approach it from a more technical standpoint? Did you focus on other local rum being made? How did you go through that process?
So I guess my rum journey, probably began like a lot of people do in the UK, which is that you start with what everyone thinks is rum, which is actually the flavored category. So those rums.
I was going to say you find Ian Burrell, and then it goes from there naturally.
You hunt him down.
Yeah.
I wish I was aware. I had been aware of Ian. So there's more. Yeah, you go to the supermarket. So you're from the supermarket, or I remember being in a wine shop in Edinburgh, and I think, I maybe told someone that I was thinking about setting up a rum distillery. They're like, "Oh, you should go and speak to this guy in this shop. He'll sort you out." And so I went to there. He's like, "Oh yeah." So he told me about some rums. But again, they're rums that now I know. Well,
you're searching for the right words to say.
We all do that a little bit. Yeah.
Well, let's say the first premium rum I got was Diplomatico.
Okay. That's a common experience for a lot of people.
Same here, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And then after that was Don Papa.
Okay.
Now, the Diplomatico I've gone back to, and I ended up finishing the bottle. I guess it's sweet. It's really sweet. But,
sure.
But beyond that, I think it's actually quite enjoyable in the right context. The Don Papa, I liked when I first drank it, and the same with like all the spiced rums that I bought all the time. Even, by the way, that I was never the plan. The plan was never to make spiced rum at the start. My plan was always to do unaged rums, straight, pure products.
The best laid plans of mice and men, right?
Indeed. Robert Burns, by the way.
Yeah, that's right.
Lives right here. Yeah.
Oft gang a glay.
So yeah, the stuff I liked at the time, which I guess is probably the same as a lot of people, was the like really heavily flavored, really sweetened stuff that basically you didn't really taste the rum in them at all. You're just tasting vanilla and clove and sugar. And so what's been interesting for me is actually how my palate has evolved now that I make my own stuff. Is that a lot of those rums I enjoyed before, I cannot stand now. Mm-hmm. They just don't do it for me. But yeah, that's kind of where I started. And I went to there was a rum festival in Glasgow, I think.
Okay.
Along to, and at the time, I was only aware of 2 Scottish rum brands that were around. Dark Matter, who'd been around for a couple of years, and one which just popped up, which I was really annoyed about at the time, because at the time it was only Dark Matter, and I'm like, I'm going to set a rum distillery, make my own rum. It's going to be an unaged rum.
Right.
And then a brand called Seawolf appeared, and Seawolf was a Scottish white rum. I'm like, God damn it! So then I went to this rum festival and met 2 other new Scottish rum, 2 or 3 other new Scottish rum brands there.
Hey, what the hell?
It seems like a movement.
Exactly.
What's going on?
Like, what the fuck? Someone else is making Scottish rum. So that was interesting because I got to then try and see what was going on. And one of those guys was Ross Bradley, who has Sugar House Rum. And so Ross ended up being pals with Ross, and he helped me out massively to get this place set up. Loads of advice from him.
That's awesome.
And he's someone who I still sort of tap into now and again, because he is a proper rum geek. He does all the reading, all the history research, all the, he's just voracious researcher, I guess, about stuff. Whereas I tend to do despite the fact I have a PhD, I tend to just do little bits and pieces of I just need to find out something, and I'll maybe go and ask someone or do a little bit of reading, and that's just enough just to, and that's enough for me. I don't go any deeper into it.
Well, you did 6 years of postgraduate school, so yeah, need a break.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I was going to say I probably didn't do enough research. I think if I look at actually how prepared I was to build and start build a rum distillery, start making rum, I was probably very unprepared. But in a way, I think, and this is me justifying my laziness now, but I think that's actually been quite good for me, because I didn't come with any real preconceptions about what it was I needed to make, or what I was trying to make. I didn't come loving a particular style or category of rum, and I was trying to, do my version of it or do something like it. I kind of came with I kind of knew very vaguely what I wanted to produce, which is maybe a very naive vision of what I wanted to do and what kind of rum should be. But then, and so I bought my equipment, or my still anyway, based on that notion. And then the spirit that came off it is just what comes up with, or rather what comes out of the fermenter and distilled, is just a product of, a set of steps I went down. So I wasn't aiming for anything in particular, but what I've ended up with is pretty good. So I just kind of stuck with it, really. And it's my own thing. And I suppose that naivety at the beginning was maybe to my advantage, in that I just do my own thing, do it my way, and it's my own thing.
Yeah, you're in the process of discovery on your own, in a way, which is just a different way of getting to the same route. It might take a little bit more time or a little bit more, thoughts in different ways, but that's as valid as, going in with all of this and then trying to build on something after you've done all that kind of armchair work, right? So it's interesting to hear and see how you're approaching it in that kind of a different way and how it's led you to where you're at. So speaking of preconceived notions here, because you mentioned that, there is something that we have to tackle a little bit here. I don't want to spend too much time on Scotch whiskey, but it's kind of unavoidable. Like as an American who hasn't been to Scotland, and I feel like if you go to Scotland, like you can't throw a rock without hitting a Scotch distillery, a whiskey distillery of some type. And so, when Will and I were recently talking about Mexico and about Mexican sugarcane spirits and how difficult it is to get some attention there because of the tequila and the mezcal scene kind of being equated with that country. So similar to you there in Scotland, I would think that holds for Scotch whiskey, kind of dominating the mental association. So I guess the question here, and you can talk about whatever you like, with it, but I wonder what the conversation would look like when you tell somebody that you're doing rum here in Scotland. Do they ever ask you, like, why did you decide to do rum and not whiskey? And if so, like, how do you give the answer to that? Or are you just like tired of it and you're like, because I wanted to, like, how do you go about even talking to somebody through that?
So basically every single time I'm asked, so
yeah,
why are you doing rum? And actually, it's not just because of whiskey. I guess Scotch gets the international attention, but gin is a huge thing.
Right, that's true.
Here in the UK, and it has been for quite a while now. So while whiskey is a gigantic industry in Scotland, and a lot of it gets exported, it brings a very significant amount of money into the economy. Yeah, the whiskey distilleries tend to be quite large, and they're multi-million pound operations. Diageo or Beach and Tory owned or whatever. They're not a huge number of like truly independently owned distilleries and Scotch distilleries. Whereas you look at gin, and most of the gin distilleries are
new,
small craft.
Are like my kind of scale.
Right. Yeah.
They're 1, 2, 5 person outfits. But some gin brands have gone massive. And some of those have been attached to whiskey distilleries because they are ways that a whiskey distillery can make money if they're new, until they've got something something that's actually whiskey to sell. So so whiskey and gin are like the default position for if you're making a clear liquid is gin. If you're making a brown liquid, is whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm doing a stall or I'm doing something and they see a clear bottle of liquid on the table, even though it says rum on the label, and all the stuff says rum on the stall.
Yeah,
like, gin.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, this is a weird gin.
Yeah, and a lot of people just see it and just assume it's something.
Yeah.
So I get. So there's a lot of surprise, a lot of like. So usually people ask, so why rum? And I mean, apart from why not, it's. My process for deciding to do rum was that gin was already a saturated market. So I didn't, when I was looking at this 5 years ago, gin was saturated even then. And it's even more so now. Whiskey is super expensive to do, both capital costs and, your cash flow from cash flow point of view. So, and just despite, being Scottish, I'm not really a big whiskey drinker, big whiskey fan, never have been. So, it kind of wasn't really on my radar to do something like that. So gin, sorry, even I said it. So rum was kind of not the default, well, what else am I going to make kind of thing, but it seemed to make sense. It's something which in the UK, you don't have to age in order to call it rum. You can just distill a bottle of unaged product, call it rum, so you can get a product out there. You can flavor it up if you want to, and you can age it. So you can do all the things with it. It is a really versatile spirit. And then having got into the category and then seeing what the category is like, you realize just what a great category it is. It's so diverse. The community around it is fantastic by and large. And so I guess there's a thing there about, some people will, usually they ask this question and I'll give an answer and that satisfies them. A couple of people, doesn't matter what you say to them, they will just not accept it. Mm-hmm. I do get asked, so can you make rum in Scotland?
Right.
There's this, association that rum or sugarcane spirits come from hot places in the world, which is totally fine. Right. And in Scotland, because we can't grow sugarcane here, then how can it be rum? How can it be a Scottish rum? And you're like, well, the Scotch whiskey industry isn't based entirely on Scottish grown grain, or even UK grown grain. And a lot of it gets imported. So if you're gonna set the standard as your raw material has to be grown in the country it's distilled in, then you wouldn't have a Scotch industry as large as it is in Scotland either.
Yeah.
Well, and rum has a long history. I mean, it was made in the States in the 1700s. So, I mean, it has a long history of molasses going to other places and being distilled, even if maybe this is kind of the first time for Scotland.
So it's not the first time for Scotland. Rum was made in Scotland in the 17th century.
Really? Wow.
Mid to late 1600s.
That's fascinating.
So, this is something which I learned a couple of years ago. And there are guys who'll tell you much more detail about this, but the association, I guess, is kind of obvious. That at the time with British Empire, Scotland rather, was sending textiles to West Africa and trading textiles for slaves to go to the Caribbean, where they work on plantations to produce sugar to come back to Scotland. So Scotland Scotland gets it doesn't really quite get free pass. The people tend to forget about Scotland and its role within the slave trade, because there's no direct slave trading in and out of any ports in Scotland, if I remember that right. They definitely not from Glasgow. So places like Liverpool, for example, was trading slaves. But in Scotland that didn't happen. However, it was still linked because we were using Scottish produce to send abroad to trade for slaves. Although they never landed here, we were linked to it, and a lot of street names in Edinburgh and Glasgow, a lot of well-known names from that period, were all slave owners, and the reason there were streets named after them is because all the money made from slavery they back into the cities they lived in. So rum, there's a bunch of sugar houses in Glasgow where rum was brought in from the Caribbean, refined. Was it refined? Yeah, I think refined further, but they started to convert it into rum, or the version of rum anyway. So I don't think they converted it to molasses before they made rum from it. I think they were taking sugar and making it straight from the sugar.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So possibly not rum as you would allow it now, but it was referred to as rum, and it ended up being more popular than Scotch, than whiskey at the time.
Wow.
So there was an act of Parliament apparently that the Scotch industry at the time lobbied to have rum production banned in Scotland, and they
that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, you see, like, the more you go into the history of rum and stuff, you see that in a lot of different places, even in some of the Spanish colonies that, are no longer Spanish colonies, but now those countries make rum. There are a lot of times where there were periods where rum production was outlawed in, places like Puerto Rico and stuff like that, because, they didn't want it to compete with brandy and things like that the, wealthy people in the main country were making a lot of money off of. But that's all a story for another podcast probably. But that's really interesting, because I didn't know that Scotland had that rum making past. That's interesting to note, and especially that it was from more refined sugar as opposed to molasses, which I think in the EU, I think that's not allowed to be called rum. In the US, you can use any byproduct and call it rum. So there's plenty of craft distilleries here who use
crystallized sugar.
Yeah, crystallized sugar at various levels of being refined. Sometimes it's very unrefined, and sometimes people just use straight up refined sugar, which usually doesn't lead to a very characterful spirit, but it can still be legally called rum in the US. So
the rules in the EU, to which still should apply in the UK now, are effectively liquid byproducts of cane production. So but there are distilleries in the UK who, I guess, go into kind of grey areas with this. Some who don't, some who outright just use the wrong things. But because no one really
Not a lot of enforcement. Yeah.
So it's all. So we don't have. Forgive me for misremembering the name of them. Is it TTB?
Yes, the TTB in the States. Yeah.
So we don't have a direct equivalent here.
Okay.
So if you have a product that you want to release, you just do your labels, and print them, and stick them on a bottle.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
So many American distillers right now listening to this are extremely jealous, I think.
In the theory, they need to comply. There are obviously rules that they need to comply with, but there's a mismatch of government bodies that are responsible for the labeling on food and drink products, but they're all responsible for different bits of what goes on a label. So it's never very clear who's actually policing these things and who is. So and what counts as rum, because rum's a relatively unknown spirit in the UK, is challenging. So anyway, but yeah, I mean, rum production in Scotland, it ended basically with the end of slavery. So there's a big gap from where imported sugar was no longer so cheap that you could just convert it into alcohol. So yeah, rum production basically slid away. So Dark Matter were the first modern rum distillery to get going, and they've been on the go for 6 or 7 years now. So, and I think in England, there was a rum distillery, or rather a distillery that started making rum maybe 7 or 8 years ago now. I think the English Spirit Company, I think they started. So it's still very, very, I mean, the gin boom has been going on for about 14 years now, 15 years. So rum is still, in terms of producing in the UK, still very, very new.
Yeah.
And therefore it does surprise people when you tell them that that's what you make. Usually all the rum drinkers find the woodwork at that point. You know, you go, I've gone and done been in gin tasting events as the only rum producer there. And there's always someone in the group of friends going around who are like, oh, rum, but everyone's like,
rum, yeah.
There's the rum drinker. And, they've just been tagging along, drinking gin because mates drink it. And
you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Kit, before we get to some of the more technical things with how you're producing what you're doing there, I want to ask a decidedly untechnical question that I had purely of my own interest here after reading the Fat Rum Pirate interview with you he did a couple of years back. He mentioned you sent out some samples, so I assume this is, you're just getting going, you're getting your stuff. He said that you sent out samples with obscene names on them, and I'm not sure whether we can include that here or not, but I just had to ask, was that an intentional strategy on your part to do that?
Viral marketing.
Was it just your personality? I mean, I imagine things like donkey piss, or I have no idea what obscene names mean, but what was that about?
I'm trying to remember now what they were. I think I sent out two bottles, 2 soft bottles. I can't remember exactly what they were, but yeah, they were probably far too rude, even for the swear jar on this. But I think that's my I guess that's my personality.
Yeah.
I don't, or in the background, obviously I take my business very seriously, but as a person, I don't take myself, or I try not to take myself too seriously. And I guess I like to think I have a sense of humor. So I like, my business, my brand is kind of me. I haven't hidden away behind my branding and just had, my branding's great, but it's linked to me,
right,
and my family. So, and I don't know, I guess I just put myself right at the forefront of my business. And with that comes, for better or worse, my personality.
Obscene sample names.
Yeah, exactly. It's in obscene sample names. So I wouldn't do that to everyone, but I guess I felt, I can't remember. I actually, do you know what it was? I hadn't sent them directly to Wes, Fat Rum Pirate. I'd sent them to Ross at Sugar House, and he'd passed them on for me. Mm-hmm. So they're really for Ross, and then
well, that's the danger.
Didn't
right?
go to the intended audience.
Yeah. But having met Wes not long after I launched, I knew that he was the kind of guy who would find those things funny. So and that's what I like is that a lot of people in their own kind of community, are just good fun. Like it's not this very kind of buttoned down, we're taking things way too seriously.
Not as stuffy.
Of industry, which perhaps other spirits might be guilty of. I mean, I know that rum has this. Maybe it's an unwanted reputation for being a fun spirit, and therefore people don't take it seriously as a proper quality liquid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does help. It removes hopefully those barriers of people thinking it's too stuffy.
Yeah.
There's not this kind of gatekeeping of just stuffy old man kind of thing. So I'd like to think in some way that I'm part of that kind of ethos, part of that kind of culture. So and with that comes quite open. As I said earlier, I'm quite open about what I do, how I do it, and I'm very honest and I'm as transparent as I can be about stuff I do. And I think that definitely helps, particularly with kind of serious rum drinkers, people who are really invested in the category. They just hoover up all that knowledge and information, and I'm happy to give it.
On that note, I know we talked about your production a little bit earlier when you were telling us about the new fermentation you have going. And one thing I'm always interested in with newer distilleries is just how much tweaking, experimentation are they still doing? Like, do you feel like you have everything locked in at this point? It sounds like, I imagine you do have production practices locked in for your standard products, but you're still trying other things along the way, which is really cool. But I wanted to see if you could just kind of give us a quick walkthrough of sort of what your production process is like, just, going from fermentation to distillation and, how long you're fermenting and that kind of thing.
So I ferment and distill from scratch. So I'm using sugarcane molasses, which is from the supplier tells me that it's mostly Algerian, so it's a North African molasses. However, when you ask for an exact makeup of the blends, they just send you this huge list of could be from any of these places.
Right.
So that's what I use as my base, 1,000 liters at a time, and that goes into the fermenter along with my water. And I use two different yeasts as well. One yeast is more for kind of yield and a quick fermentation, and the other one is to bring more flavor into it. So I use two different yeasts, so they're pitched at the same time, and I use two types of nutrients as well to again accelerate the fermentation time. With those nutrients, I can do like a 3 or 4 day fermentation is kind of a standard fermentation time for me. If I lose one of those nutrients and just use one, it's about 7-day fermentation. I've never done one without nutrient addition, but I know, having seen what other UK rum producers do, who I'm assuming don't nutrient dose, they're looking at 2-3 week fermentations. So I'm doing a short fermentation, and that decision was, again, it was a commercial one. I need to be potentially trying to smash through as much liquid as I
can't wait 2 weeks between every distillation.
Right. So that was always the philosophy when I was doing my recipe process development was, and that doesn't necessarily sacrifice flavor either. It's not, and that's what I learned in that process was that, and through speaking to people, was that I didn't, just because I'm doing a really quick fermentation doesn't mean that I'm losing out on anything.
Right. Yeah.
I'm telling you, if you look at like Caribbean distilleries, they're doing like 1.5 day fermentations, super quick. And no one's going to say that, there's no flavor or you're lacking flavor from like a Jamaican rum or something. So,
sure. Yeah. It's not always simple as just saying like, you didn't ferment for a month. Your rum must not be very flavorful. There's a big spectrum of flavor there.
But there's so many variables that go into it.
Yeah.
Each one can affect and how it turns out.
Yeah.
So 3-4 day fermentation. So that tank behind me, I'm afraid I'm going to do this in the correct numbers. So this is a 1,500 liter.
The correct numbers. That's great. Sorry. Keep going. Sorry, I just had to remark on that. I agree personally. As an American, I think it makes more sense. Yeah, I think Willie,
you
you're
won't
on the
get
same
any
page.
argument from us. Yeah,
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. I guess it's down in proportions. So
Right.
this is 1,500 liters, 1,500 liters. My still, it's a pot hybrid, column hybrid. The pot is only 500 liters. So I do double distillation. So I do stripping runs first to strip the alcohol out of the wash. By the way, this ends up at about 9 to 10% ABV.
Okay.
By tie-stump fermenting. So I have to do 500 liter batches in my pot to work my way through what's in that tank, which is the main kind of bottleneck of my production here. Is I'm single still and it's quite small. It's too small, really. I know now for what I'm trying to do here. So
it basically takes like three to separate distillation.
Yeah, that's right.
To get through a batch.
Yep. And each one has a heat up time, so there's a lot of energy spent doing that. And then, like today, I did 2 of those distillations today, which means being in here 7 o'clock in the morning, and then finishing. Well, today I finished. I made sure I was finished in time for this, so I finished early-ish. So yeah, they're long days. So having done a stripping runs, I redistill those or distill those low wines that get produced off the stripping run. So they just go back into the pot, and I send the vape from the pots through a little 4-plate rectifying column, and I distill to my final rum strength is like about 90 to 90.5% ABV coming off the column. So yeah, so that whole process is, say, 6 days to produce a spirit off the still. And then depending what product I'm producing off that, I need to do water, I need to add water to dilute down. And I try and do that reasonably slowly. So I try and do like 10 or 15% ABV drops every day.
Okay.
And it's quite gently. So that can take maybe another 4 or 5 days to get down to, say, 40%, which is, or was when I was bottling at. It is the strength that my spice plum is at. So, yeah, so the whole process is like a week and a half to 2 weeks. And out of that, I may produce something like 350 bottles is probably the limit on a single batch. So, yeah, so it's super, super small, but a lot of work goes into producing that.
And what I know you've done a few kind of, I think you've called them like experimental age releases. What's kind of the current status of your aging program? How many casks do you have currently? And what are kind of the I don't know, 5-year outlook or so for aged releases?
So the last question I can't answer because I can't even think that far ahead.
Sure. I went too many years out in the future. Maybe we could say 12-month outlook.
Yeah, the cask aging program, if we want to call it that.
We can call it that. Don't sell it short.
Is extremely ad hoc. It's And so what I have so I have a separate building to here. Where I am just now, by the way, used to be a cow shed. This is where cows just get brought in to be milked.
Okay. I thought you were about to say slaughtered. Milked is much more positive, I feel.
Yeah. No milk. No, they went back out alive. So, so this used to be a cow shed, but this was the original one. It was quite small. The building next door that has my casks in was a later addition, or was built in the 1950s, I think, and took about in fact, quadruple, what you would fit it in here.
Okay.
So as a warehouse space, it's quite good. Once we've sort of converted it. So there's space in there for about 300 standard barrels.
Okay, wow.
However, there's only, I think, about 25 casks in there at the moment, and there's a whole mixture of stuff in there just now.
Do you have different sizes, or did you go straight to doing 53 gallon?
So I went straight to standard barrel.
Okay.
And that's what I want to continue filling, but that's very challenging for me. A standard barrel requires me to do 2 batches to get enough liquid to fill.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like every batch is a barrel's worth, which is frustrating. It takes me a long time to build up stock. So yeah, I started with standard barrels. I started with virgin oak as well, virgin American oak.
Interesting.
Yeah. So and again, this is my utter naivety in this. I thought, well, I'll start with virgin oak, and my reasoning behind that was that I wanted to see, without any other spirit influence, what my
I see.
do
Right.
in one of those
Kind of
barrels.
the purest kind of form of an aged spirit that you're making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there, see, what to start adding in, like ex bourbon or ex whiskey or whatever, where things go.
Yeah, what's the influence?
Right.
Uh-huh.
However, what I didn't know at the time, but ended up being quite fortuitous, like, and of course I've got this knowledge now, is that obviously with a virgin barrel, you mature much more quickly.
Yeah,
right.
So you get a lot more of that oak.
Yeah,
Right.
and because there's no minimum aging time for rum in the EU and in the UK, then you can do like a relatively, I was going to say unaged, relatively young,
Right. Like a
spirit.
6 month or yeah.
So I did my first like official experimental cask series release, so single cask. Yeah, it was a year old. It was at 12 months, virgin oak, which went down very well. It was very well received, well enough that about 6 months later, the Pete actually put me in touch with Atom Brands, that he represents.
Yeah,
and we did a boutique rum bottling of my rum at just under a year and a half.
That was cool. Were you expecting something like that to happen so early, or was that a big surprise?
Yeah, that was a big surprise. I felt very, very flattered that Batiki would want to come and show up on my liquors.
Yeah, that's great.
And I actually have got, so this is my open bottle here. Pete and I had a lot of fun with the label.
Yeah, what is on? Can you describe the label?
So the label has, so to set the context for this, my brand is a six-winged angel. It's a seraphim.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to ask about that later. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
So, and the seraphim is my family crest. So as our brothers,
okay.
on a coat of arms, if you were to have a coat of arms as a brothers, then at the top would be this seraphim. So that's the brand. When Pete and I were discussing it, he wanted to put the angel on, and that's totally fine. The angel needs to be there, and we were sort of spitballing some ideas. We wanted to have. I have a distillery cat called Watson. Watson's my cat, and he does a little bit of social media stuff for me.
So you've never just been truly a one-man operation. Watson.
There you go.
it's
One man, one
there.
cat. Yeah.
Really. So Watson kind of features as well, and so the label ended up being basically it's a shield with kind of ribbons around it, which is how a coat of arms would look. So a coat of arms would have whatever the crest at the top.
Right.
You'd have a shield, which has the shield is basically the unique bits of a coat of arms. So every individual will have a different thing on the shield, and then you'd have a motto underneath. So the shield makes up the main design, and within that shield, there's basically me, Watson the cat, an angel, six-winged angel, and Pete Holland all doing like a Scottish jig, like a kind of Scottish country dance thing. And Watson's in his kilt, and
Great.
and then underneath it just shows like the still, it's barrels. There's like, I think there's an overflowing bag of carbon. There's carbon
Perfect. Yeah.
bag. And then in the corners of the shield, there's Robert Bruce, because Robert Bruce gave my family land about 800 years ago.
Wow.
There's a link to him. And then in the other corner is Old King Cole. Do you know that nursery rhyme? Old King Cole's Merry Old Soul.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, I guess, loosely based on a Viking king, I think, called Cole Hen. And apparently we may be linked to Cole Hen in some way.
Wow.
So therefore, Old King Cole kind of features within our family lore, I suppose.
I was about to say, there's so much lore behind this label.
Yeah.
I know.
So there's loads of really like fun detail on there. So yeah, Pete and I did a lot of fun with that one.
I just love that. I have a mental image of you, like, tasting a batch of your rum as it comes out and then turning to the cat and saying, "Elementary, my dear Watson."
Yeah, I haven't, but I will.
So, Kid, as a kind of a micro distillery, is that the right term? I can use that. We know, I think, batch consistency, I would think, can sometimes be a challenge. And you've already said you experiment a lot and you're figuring out, although I'm sure you have a baseline now. Is that something you focus on reducing at all? Or do you kind of just accept there's going to be batch consistency things and lean into it? Or how do you approach that given the small scale of what you're doing?
So consistency was one of my big worries when I was building the place and conceiving the idea was how would I know that what I was producing was consistent? And it wasn't like wildly different every time I did it. Was my palate going to be good enough to figure that out? So my approach to it is that I try and do, at least on the fermentation side, I try and ferment differently the same every single time. Or
except least, today.
Except this batch. So I once I got to the recipe, I'll just basically try to stuck with it. I have tweaked it a little bit, but it's largely just that's more process side rather than flavor side. It's really just either make my life easier or whatever. So, and then on the distillation side, I try and distill the same every time. However, basically every batch I do will be different because of the proportion of low wines and feints that they're distilled. So I end up accumulating feints in the tank.
Which some people might refer to feints as tails, correct?
Well, so my feints are basically heads and tails. So,
gotcha.
They're foreshots and tails, really.
Okay.
And so they're what I call feints. So they accumulate, and which means that when I come to do distillations, there's more and more larger proportion of them. But I don't think it significantly changes maybe it does like batch to batch. It will change it might change the profile slightly, but it's still my rum. Like it's still distinctly my rum.
Right. Yeah.
It's not better or worse for it. So yeah, I basically don't change the recipe up, and so I basically try and stick to the same kind of thing. However, if I'm putting away things in the barrels, I may play around with doing other things. So I can redistill flakes, for example, that I went into the casks, or I could do like I'm doing now and maybe start playing with fermentation or distillation. All my rums are run through the column, but I can bypass the column and just do a straight hop distilled product, which gives it's less rectified, and so maybe more characterful product, but I get a lower yield on it. So I'm reluctant to do it, because it already takes me a long time to produce my spirits. So if I'm going to go to all that effort, I want to get as much out of it as I can. So, but there's things there to play with. But if I'm playing with stuff, I go away into the casks, and I can do the whole like single cask stuff. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to cask aged rum, then at the moment anyway, basically everything that I have released has been different in some way. That's totally fine. You know, that's great. In fact, that's a really good thing, because it urges people to try the next thing and see.
Exactly right.
Fine. So, and actually that kind of goes back to what you're asking about my cask for rum, is that I've got a whole variety of stuff from virgin oak through to ex-bourbon. There's Jack Daniels in there. Most of it's standard barrel, but I've got some octaves or quarter casks that were ex-Oloroso, ex-Speyside whiskey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool.
I've got an STR, a couple of ex-whiskey casks, and I now have, I don't know if you pick this up on my social media, I now have my oak barrels made with oak from the estate. So,
cool. When you said there was forestry type stuff, my mind kind of went there and wondered if you're doing that. So,
yeah.
What's the process for making your own barrels?
Long. 4 years ago, before I'd even made a drop of rum, we found some oak on the estate that was probably, it would have blown down or it died or diseased or rotted anyway. So although there's not much oak on the estate, we decided to cut that oak down. Yeah, that was felled, milled, so converted into boards and dried. They've been sitting drying for like the last 4 years. And then finally I had some money to get them coopered. So sent them to cooperage in Yorkshire. And got 9 standard barrels out of the oak, set them.
That's very cool.
Sweet.
Yeah. Not many people can say, you see a lot of kind of single estate distilleries, but even those, I would say most of the time, they're not making barrels from wood that was grown on the estate. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yes, aside from that fact, there's not even any Scottish oak barrels around anywhere.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, I mean, you hear American oak, you hear French oak.
right.
Sometimes you hear like Hungarian oak and stuff like that. But I've never heard, Scottish oak barrels.
So we'll see how they do. One's a little bit leaky at the moment, but I think that's just because of the temperature. I think it's so hot just now. I had 200-liter casks made as well, which were made from beech.
Oh,
so totally different woods. So that's very much experimental, just to see. Well, it's all experimental, but this is
it's even more experimental.
Yeah, it's extra experimental.
Extra experimental. So experimental that the coopers who have decades of experience between them had never worked with beech before. So this is
wow.
What is it when you bring it to them and you say, "Can you do something with this?" Are they excited about doing it? Or are they like, "What are you giving me this for?"
Like, yeah, we can build a doghouse.
No, they were like, "Yep, we'll do it."
Awesome.
I think they just love working with wood. They love their craft. I think they like being challenged. So, because otherwise, for a lot of these coopers in the UK anyway, most of what they end up doing is breaking apart,
repair.
And repairing ex-bourbon barrels, or they're used to, they get very standardized oak and they're building new from stuff they're just used to.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot of skill goes into that, but I guess a lot of it they can kind of maybe switch off, so they're just doing their thing. Whereas if they get something that's totally out there, we've never done this before,
new challenge,
skilled, and they want to, because they're craftsmen.
Yeah.
Really, the craft, the skill that goes into it is phenomenal. So like any craftsman, they love just doing wacky shit. So I took some chestnuts to them as well, some horse chestnuts. I knew that I wasn't going to get some barrels made to put rum into, because horse chestnut is probably poisonous because of tannins. But I asked if they could make my little display one, and they tried, and they could. The wood just every time they tried to bend it, it would just split. So
well, at least that's the poison one. So
yeah. One of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, Kit, is you mentioned your social media, and I had seen one of the social media posts recently where you had, I think you referred to it as a brand relaunch. So I wanted to ask you about that recently and what the relaunch was, and why you pushed that out there, and what's different and why.
Yeah, it's not so much a brand relaunch, it's a product relaunch. I was struggling to get the bottle that I have been using from the supplier. Turned out it's pretty much the last UK customer of theirs for that particular bottle before they withdrew it from the market.
They couldn't have told you that? They couldn't have told you that when you bought them the first time?
Right?
Exactly, yeah.
The look on your face then just said it all, yeah.
Yep. Moving on. Yeah, that may be what I wrote on my reactions. Maybe I wrote those bottles to Wes.
Right, that was one of the names of the samples. Was the name for that person?
There might have been an F word and a C word on there. So I was struggling to get to source my bottles. So I made a decision, which I would normally, I guess, not have made. Either you do this right at the start of a product or brand launch. Mm-hmm. Or you do it quite far down the road.
Right,
you got,
right.
Loads of cash and whatever it's doing. But I guess I sort of forced my own hand on this one. Was that in order to change my bottle, I didn't want to. I could have just changed another off-the-shelf bottle, but I liked how unique my bottle was already, and I didn't want to source something that was more easy to get to then share a similar, not so much aesthetic, but bottle profile or something to another brand.
Right.
Given my brand, I think is so strong. I didn't want to dilute it in that way. So I embarked on the journey to basically have a custom bottle made. And so the relaunch is relaunching with a new bottle.
Got it.
So it's all fully custom. So it's all on point with the brand.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful bespoke thing. And with that, I guess, came the opportunity to do a tweak of the products that I have as well. Mm-hmm. So when I first launched, was just with an unaged rum, it's my pure single rum, and I bottled that at 40%. And again, going back to my inexperience and my naivety and so on and so forth, was that I'd already picked the ABV that I was going to sell my rum at.
Yeah,
right.
Because I got some grant funding, some money to help do the design of the bottle, and that had to be spent by a certain date. And the distillery ended up being operational later than that date. So I basically had to commit to. I just picked 40. I just picked 40%. 40% seemed a reasonable ABV to be
right standard.
Yeah.
However, this is not to knock my own products at all, but my unaged rum 40% is good, but it's better at higher fruits.
Yeah.
However, I was kind of committed. I bought 5,000 labels, so I was kind of committed to that. But with the relaunch with the new bottle, it's start again, clean slate. So I've taken my 40% ABV unaged rum, and it'll get relaunched at 46%.
Oh, nice. We love to do that. Yeah. We spend a lot of time talking, or not a lot of time talking, but often mention rums at 80 proof that taste good, that we think just from going even just to 43% can make a huge difference. So love to hear 46 though. That's great.
Yeah. Ideally, I would go a lot higher. I sell rum in bulk to a couple of bars in London, Merchant House and Black Parrot, and I sell to them at overproof, so 57.4% goes to them.
Sweet.
And it is really good at that. However, with all the tax implication, the duty you got to pay,
right,
that ends up being quite a big liability on a bottle, and therefore either you have to take quite a big hits on the margin for it, or you have to charge appropriately. In this case, both are not particularly attractive, but at least as a regular core product, I will almost certainly do an overproof release in my bottle, because it is really good up to that strength. But 446 is a good balance of, there's a bit of extra in there, and it's commercially it works for me. So yeah, there's that, and then I've got my spice drum as well, which I'm not changing. It's staying as it is. But with the relaunch comes a new aged product as well. So and that's the start of what I hope to be a kind of core range of aged products. So rather than single cask experimental stuff, this will be standard or reasonably standard products going forward. But I'm not quite sure how to manage that, because I don't know how well it's going to sell. It should be between 1.5 or between 1 and 2 years of aging in virgin barrels or refilled virgin barrels. That makes sense. Like a second fill, not technically a virgin barrel, but it's had nothing else in it.
A used rum barrel, basically.
Yeah, it's a used barrel, and then eventually I'll progress into ex-bourbon in a few years. So yeah, maybe another 2 or 3 years, I should have some ex-bourbon stuff that should be ready to either replace it or start blending in with it. But I won't. I get it. I don't know what I'm going to do with that till the time comes.
And have you filled any of those Scottish oak barrels yet?
Filled 2 so far. Yeah,
that's
filled
cool.
2 of the oak and filled the 2 beach barrels.
Yeah, nice. I'll be really interested to see how those turn out.
Yeah, me too. I don't think there's anyone who's like, it's really shit, and it's not really worth the wait. But yeah, we'll have to see. And I'll have to decide what I'm going to do with those as well, because I know that 2 or 3 years in that will be really good for how they're going to taste. But given I've got like 9 of them, I don't want to just release like all 9 and basically they're all basically the same.
Right.
I think when they get to 2 or 3 years, I'd like to re-rack them into their own. Each barrel appears in this one. So whether we do port, sherry, brandy, wine, whiskey, ex-bourbon, and then they can all just at that point they then just diverge and they just go and do their own things. I think is kind of what I see in my head. That's about as hard as I'm thinking at the moment.
Yeah. Sounds like the Ninefold barrels there. The
that's true. I didn't think about nine barrels, 9-fold. It's all coming together.
I'm available for hire on your marketing team.
Well, Kit, I know you've been braving the high temperatures over there for this interview. We won't make you sit here too much longer. It's been great learning more about Ninefold and everything. And like I was just saying then, a lot of exciting things, I think, for people to look forward to coming out in the coming years. But before we go, we do have a tradition here on the Rumcast. It's a rapid fire round of questions. Sometimes this can be where, the curse words fly. They just pop out as the first thing that comes to mind. So we might have to get the little ding bell working on overtime. But if you're up for it, I will let John tell you about that segment now.
Yeah, I'm not the best at thinking on my feet, but sure.
Perfect.
Sometimes that's the best type of person to do this,
exactly.
right?
Alrighty.
All right. So,
All right.
Will?
Yep, I've got 60 seconds and go.
All right. Neat or on the rocks?
Neat.
Okay. Column, pot, or blend?
Depends.
Depends is a good answer. All right. Aged or unaged?
Again, it depends. But I will commit to an answer of aged. Yep.
Okay. Glasgow or Edinburgh?
Oof.
That's a toughie.
Edinburgh was my old home for a long time.
So we'll go with that.
I adore it. However, I prefer Glasgow now.
Wow.
Surprise twist.
Yes. All right. Your favorite bottle of rum for a special occasion?
Hamden, is it 8?
Yeah, the green label. That's one of my favorites. It's a great choice.
All right. Do you ever lie awake at night with the irrational fear that someone will try to launch a rum brand called Tenfold?
No, not specifically.
But now that I put it in your head.
But the anxiety's there now, yeah.
Which Scottish accent or dialect are you most partial to?
Oh, wow. Probably Glaswegian.
Yeah, I was going to say, you said Glasgow, so maybe Glaswegian. All right, and finally, if Kit Carruthers had his druthers, rum would blank.
Unite the world.
There we go.
Very
Rum
good
will
answer.
unite
That's
the
time.
world. Amen.
Perfect. You thought on your feet
and stop
for that last
climate
one.
change at the same time.
And stop climate change is what rum would do. Well, Kit, thank you again for braving the scorching temperatures of the Scottish summer for us.
I know.
Braving the swarming horseflies. What were those called? Clegs?
Clegs. I looked it up already.
Yeah. Colloquially, they're called a cleg. They're giant horsefly, I think. They look up, they're not very, very pleasant.
Well, again, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. It's great to get our first Scottish rum distillery on the podcast. So you'll always be the first Scottish rum producer on the Rumcast. So
That's
you
right.
may not have been in the first to Scotland, but you are the first to the Rumcast, and you'll always have that honor, bragging rights.
I'm sticking out on the website straight away.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Kit. It's great hanging out
nice
with you.
to meet you guys. Ta-da. Bye.
All right, so that was our interview with Kit Carruthers. Thanks so much to Kit for joining us. If you want to know more about Ninefold, head over to ninefolddistillery.com and check them out. Plenty more information there. If you want to reach out to Will and I, of course, you can find us on social media all over the place. Will, where are we at on social media?
I believe we're at the Rumcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on YouTube as well.
Yes, you believe correctly.
Yes, if you would like to listen to our episodes on YouTube, you can do that. You can also find us on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/therumcast. So we've got some bonus episodes we're publishing there. We've got monthly happy hours we're doing. We have one coming up Wednesday, August 31st. So you can join us for that if you'd like. That's patreon.com/therumcast. There's also a link in the show notes. As always, remember, we do want to hear your rum cake recipes if you have those. So send us an email, host@rumcast.com, and let us know about those. But John, I think that's it for this week. So until next time.
All right, see you next time.